So, from learning from you guys today by hitting select A,
I wanna have the same last dream again, the one where I wake up and I'm alive, just as the four walls close me within. My eyes are open up with pure sunlight.
Good news is we have a good recording. It's a touch on the dark side, but it's a good recording. 100% I'll accept that any day of the week, okay? So again, remember what I said earlier. Use the plugins that you're comfortable with, okay? And as you can tell here, I'm using the Focusrite D2, just small, tiny increments of equalization and just the ever so much slightest amount of compression, okay? You'd be surprised at how shitty it will sound, okay? But if you're heavy-handed like me and use massive amounts of compression and abnormal amounts of equalization, it will sound something like this.
I wanna have the same last dream again, the one where I wake up and I'm alive, just as the four walls close me within. My eyes are open up with pure sunlight.
So what I'm looking to achieve here is I'm looking to get his vocal aggressive. I actually wanted to I wanted to start spitting and barking at me. And that's kind of what I'm hearing. I know that if you use his unaffected vocal as your reference point, that all of a sudden when you put the one that I've equalized and compressed, you're like, oh my God, that's horrible. No, that's because his un-EQ'd vocal and uncompressed vocal is not a real world reference point, okay? Remember we talked about earlier about having a real world reference. Let's just listen to that with the track.
I wanna have the same last dream again, the one where I wake up and I'm alive, just as the four walls close me within. My eyes are open up with pure sunlight.
So what you end up with now is something that's at least a little bit closer to my ear, a little bit closer in line with what the track is doing. So yeah, it's a little heavy-handed. There's no doubt about it. I'm gonna be the first one to admit it. But I wanted Tom's vocal to spit and bite. It's by spitting and biting, I was trying to have him almost overload his mic pre a little bit. You know what I mean? That's what I was trying to achieve. But I'm trying to get that sound without it sounding modern, if that makes any sense to you. You know, in less of a decapitator type of sound. I wanted it to sound a little bit more modern. So that's kind of what I was going for. Again, as always, like I said, we have the ability and the processing power to have multiples of reverbs. We're back in the old days, you know, I might only have 4 or 5 different effects with their DAWs. We can just have effects, channels and channels and channels and channels of effects. So why would you not have a different vocal reverb setup than your chorus reverb and your bridge reverb? Even if the chain of events is exactly the same, you might want them at different levels. So why would I automate it? So example, I mean, like, let's just go through, here's my there's my verse reverb, here's my chorus reverb, exactly the same, and here's my bridge reverb, exactly the same. Now let's look what's after them. So here's the bridge reverb, right? That would be the effect, that would be the plug-in after the SSL EQ. So that's where all the changes are happening, okay? That's where I do all the changes. I've always been curious as to why guys, you know, I see them automating the outputs of their effects or other things like that. It's like, why not just create a separate one for the chorus? And that's what I did here. So I used the same starting point for the reverbs, okay? But just treated them differently. So I believe that the chorus reverb was probably my starting point, okay? So if we quickly just go down to the chorus, we got them 27 to 28. How you doing?
Hey, here I am.
On this particular song, I wanted Tom's chorus because it's doubled. I normally don't do it like this, but on this one I did. I wanted a slight stereo panning on the 2 vocals. So it's why I brought them up on 27 and 28, because 25 and 26 I reserve for my vocal and vocal double up the center. If I ever use vocal doubles, a vocal and a vocal double that I want to pan, I'll put them on other channels, and that's what I did in this specific instance. That's why they're coming out 27 to 28. But if you notice on the channels right below it, my bridge vocal and my bridge vocal double are coming out in 25 and 26. That's because they're not panned, okay? So I also took, obviously, the chorus and made its own verb, and then just EQ'd it slightly differently. So I probably started with this for the chorus.
And here we go, life's waiting to begin.
Okay, and then would have probably brought that up to the verse track. Okay, so we'll go back to the verse track. Earlier, when I first started, I played the mix, and we talked about the rough mix, and I said I couldn't take credit for the lead vocal treatment, but I could take credit for making it my own. So I took their intent, which was a similar style of pre-delayed reverb, and made it my own. What I'm using today is different from what I used on the original mix, because the plugin that I used on the original mix isn't as good anymore. So I didn't use it on this mix. For some reason, in the old Pro Tools 5 system, it sounded really good, and it doesn't sound any good in this system, so I don't use that plugin anymore. But what I did use on this is the Valhalla vintage verb, which sounded great, the concert hall. And again, there's no surprise. I'm sending it, rather than use the pre-delay in the reverb, okay, I actually put a delay in front of it and have some repeats on it, some feedback. It's part of the sound is that pre-delayed reverb, okay? So if we just listen to the reverb, the reverb return. So one of the other things that I did is I de-essed, okay? If I take the de-esser off, it gets a little sandy sounding, and I don't like that. So I de-essed the input into into that whole chain of events on just the reverb send. Clearer.
Wake up and I'm alive. Just as the four walls close me within, my eyes are open up with pure sunlight. I'm the first to know. Even if your hope has burned with
Getting that reverb to pop up. That was the cool thing about the timed reflection, was getting it to kind of suck up in the holes in between his vocal lines. So again, I can't take credit for the idea, but I can take credit for owning it, for making it my own, for taking what started as their idea and turning it into something that I felt is even better. So again, and when we go to the chorus vocal, which I've spread slightly, going through a similar effect, but did not need the de-esser, but literally going through the same chain of events, okay, and again, with some EQ. So you can see on the equalization, we're just taking some of the boxiness out of the reverb and whatnots, okay? So again, if we go back, I'm gonna just pull out, just gonna stick with some of the basics here and just listen to the vocals. Chords off.
I wanna have the same last dream again. The one where I wake up and
I'm just gonna load automation. So what do I mean by loading automation? I'm going to that point in my SSL computer on my console to run the console automation. I'd like to, because I haven't run console automation in a while. I want to just see what we're doing here.
same last dream again. The one where I wake up and I'm alive. Just as the four walls close me within, my eyes are open up with
Stop singing that sucking up.
my dearest friends. Even if your hope has burned,
I always just thought it was very, very sexy.
its death shall be regret.
So that covers those vocals, his chorus vocal, and then we go into the bridge vocal. The bridge vocal is the I cannot live, I cannot dream. I believe that's that part.
I cannot live, I can't breathe.
This came with
I
this
can't
track, which is the sweepy vocal delays. Okay, that was given to me by the band. I had no problem with that effect, and that's what I used. The only thing that I changed on this,
cannot live, I can't breathe
that
unless you
automatic
do this
vocal
with
double.
me. I cannot.
what I call the ADT. This is an old effect we used to do back in the day, which is a modulation effect. It's really prominent on John Lennon tracks like I Am the Walrus. It's a very tight modulating slap, almost like a flange that's used almost like 50-50. That was used on a lot of those Beatles tracks. And again, as you can see, I'm using it before my chain of events. And the other thing that I really didn't get into was I EQ into compression. That's how I do it. That's how I've always done it. I feel that sounds best. I rarely do it any other way, but that's usually how I do it. And we didn't even touch on that. I like to EQ into compression because I just think it sounds better, to be quite honest. I mean, especially with vocals, because you can get, you can add that additional top end, and the compressor kind of pulls that back a little bit, so you can get that little bit of extra sparkle. And this falls under that category. The only way I've ever been able to get it to sound like I Am the Walrus is by putting it on in front of the compressor.
I cannot live, I can't breathe unless you do this
was a
with
great
me.
example. It's just a slight modulation and a slight flange.
Unless you do this with
Okay, and then when we put both of them in, remember what I said earlier, so this double, I did not want to have pan left-right. So I had these run up the center, okay, and one I have a slightly lower on my console, and then we listened with the delay and the verb.
I cannot live, I can't breathe unless you do this with me. I cannot live, I can't breathe unless you do this with me. I cannot live.
And on this you can see, we'll take a look.
Unless you do this with me. I cannot live.
This, you can see, I've automated, so let's take this bridge delay out. And let's just listen. I've done some automation. So what I've done is I've swelled, because we have that nice, right. See, this all comes back to me. As I'm looking at this, I can see that eventually these delays, the sweepy vocal delays, right, you can see they fade out. So in order to compensate for that, right, what I've done is I'm fading in bus 32, which is the vocal reverb, and that sounds like this. Let's see.
Can't breathe unless you do this with me.
I love the delay though. The delay is awesome. And again, they gave that to me.
I cannot live, I can't breathe.
And then I start to fade in my reverb.
I can't breathe unless you do this with me. I cannot live,
Progressive.
unless you do this with me. I cannot live, I can't breathe unless you do this with me.